Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm NILE and these are the headlines. Brazil has reported more than 2,200 COVID-19 fatalities for the second day in a row, raising its death toll to over 272,000. Meanwhile, Thailand has become the latest country to suspend the use of AstraZeneca vaccine against coronavirus. Pakistan has registered its highest single-day caseload in months, with over 2,700 infections and 54 deaths overnight. The global number of deaths has topped 2.6 million, with more than 118 million infections. In Myanmar, the pro-democracy activists are holding more rallies against the military coup across the country. It comes a day after a rights group said security forces killed 12 protesters. The United Nations human rights investigator said the military has killed at least 70 people and detained 2,000 since the first February coup. The United States says some hopeful progress has been made towards achieving a ceasefire in Yemen. In a statement, the United States State Department said more commitment is still needed from the warring parties in Yemen. It said United States Special Envoy Tim Lenderking has visited Saudi Arabia and Oman in a UN-coordinated effort to push for a truce in Yemen. In Pakistan, senators are set to elect the chairman and deputy chairman of the country's upper house today. The government has nominated the sitting Senate chairman, Muhammad Sadiq Sandrani, for a second run and Mirza Muhammad Afridi as his deputy. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani and Maulana Abdul Ghaffur Hydari have been fielded by the opposition alliance. Earlier, the 48 newly elected senators took oath in today's special session. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Brazil, COVID-19 has claimed more than 2,200 lives for the second day in a row, raising the death toll over 272,000. Meanwhile, Thailand has become the latest country to suspend the use of AstraZeneca vaccine against the coronavirus. The global number of deaths has topped 2.6 million, with more than 118 million infections. More on the coronavirus in this report.
COVID-19 vaccine rollout has exposed in the most blatant ways the stark divide between the developed and the developing world. An investigation shows that Pfizer employed high-level bullying against at least 2 Latin American nations during talks to acquire vaccines. This comes as the fresh outbreak spirals out of control in Brazil, forcing its most populous state, Sao Paulo, to declare a 2-week emergency shutdown. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has signed a $1.9 trillion economic relief bill into law. Biden says his goal of administering 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days will be achieved on just the 60th day of his presidency.
This country will be vaccinated soon. Our economy will be on the mend. Our kids will be back in school. And we'll have proven once again that this country can do anything, hard things, big things, important things.
In Europe, Portugal has extended a state of emergency until the end of March as the government geared up to unveil a long-awaited plan to gradually lift the strict lockdown. Amid the lagging rollout, EU expanded its list of approved vaccines to 4 options with the addition of Johnson & Johnson's single-shot vaccine. European Union's medicines regulator says there is no indication that the vaccine is linked to an increased risk of blood clots. Canada, Australia, France, and Germany have also spoken in favor of the AstraZeneca after 10 countries banned it over safety issues.
Wichtig ist übrigens auch, dass die Chargen
It's important to note that the batches we're all talking about in Italy or Austria are different ones. It's always also about different batches, gestures, which were produced. So as of now, we are planning to continue vaccinating with AstraZeneca, just like an overall majority of other European countries. I was already in contact today with several European counterparts, and we said we would continue to monitor the situation very closely.
South Korea says it will extend social distancing rules with a ban on private gatherings of more than 4 people in a bid to stamp out the possibility of a 4th wave of infections. Meanwhile, New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, has lifted all remaining restrictions after no locally transmitted cases were reported for 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered its highest single-day COVID-19 cases in months with over 2,700 infections. The Health Ministry says the virus claimed 54 lives overnight, pushing the death toll to 13,430. The ministry said that the infection tally has crossed the 600,000 mark, out of which 568,000 have recovered. It said the number of active cases in the country is nearly 19,000. The ministry added over 1,700 patients are in critical condition. In Pakistan, senators are set to elect the chairman and deputy chairman of the country's upper house today. The 100-seat house will choose its leader through a secret ballot. The government has nominated the sitting chairman, Mohammad Sadiq Sandrani, for a second run and Senator Mirza Muhammad Afridi as his deputy. Meanwhile, the opposition alliance has nominated former Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani and Maulana Abdul Ghaffur Hedri. Earlier, the 48 newly elected senators took oath administered by the presiding officer, Sayyid Muzaffar Hussain Shah. In Myanmar, the pro-democracy activists have held more rallies across the country. It comes a day after a rights group said security forces killed 12 anti-coup protesters in different cities. The United Nations human rights investigators said the military has killed at least 70 people and detained 2,000 since the February 1st coup. Thomas Andrews told the council the military committed killings, tortures, and persecution that may constitute crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, Aung San Suu Kyi's lawyer has dismissed junta's allegations of receiving over $600,000 and gold as bribery. In a statement, her lawyer termed the accusations the most hilarious joke. The OIC has denounced the Swiss referendum in the favor of a ban on the burqa and urged the government to overturn it. In a statement, the body says the ban will restrict the religious freedoms of Muslim women. Hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic, Switzerland has been in a partial lockdown since January. Face masks are mandatory everywhere from public transportation to the country's iconic ski slopes. But that reality didn't stop Swiss voters from approving a ban on full face coverings in public spaces in the March 7th referendum. The measure is aimed at a minuscule minority of Muslim women who wear the burqa or niqab. A similar ban was imposed by France in 2011, while some other European Union states have full or partial bans on wearing face coverings. Human rights activists and Muslim groups have denounced the ban, saying it's an attack against their community. The OIC says the Swiss referendum was carried out at the behest of the same right-wing party that organized a ban on minarets in 2009. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has called the burqa ban a dangerous policy that violates women's rights. The United States says some hopeful progress has been made towards achieving a ceasefire in Yemen. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said more commitment is still needed from the warring parties in Yemen. It said United States Special Envoy Tim Lenderking has visited Saudi Arabia and Oman in a UN-coordinated effort to push for a truce in Yemen. It added Lenderking and UN Special Envoy are committed to working to push the parties to negotiate under the UN-proposed plan. The State Department said Houthis must end their offensive on Marib and the cross-border attacks against Saudi Arabia. Riyadh says it seeks a negotiated resolution to the Yemen conflict, but Houthis have intensified missile and drone strikes on civilian targets. The United States says it has discussed concerns about Iran with Israel during the first virtual meeting of a bilateral strategic group. White House spokesperson says National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and his Israeli counterpart Mir Ben-Shabbat headed the delegations. Spokesperson Emily Horn said the two sides shared perspective on regional security issues of mutual interest and concern. In a statement, she said the leaders expressed their common determination to confront the challenges and threats facing the region. Horn said that the national security advisors agreed on the importance of strategic interagency consultations. She added Sullivan pledged to continue these engagements. Palestinian Fatah party has expelled Yasser Arafat's nephew over his attempt to field a separate list of candidates in a May parliamentary poll. In a statement, the party said that it had given Nasir al-Qudwa 2 days to reverse his decision, but he had failed to comply. Fatah's internal divisions were a key factor in the party's loss to its rival Hamas in the last parliamentary elections in 2006. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and his inner circle have pledged party unity as they try to fight Hamas in the polls. The United States says President Joe Biden is deeply concerned and highly engaged on the humanitarian situation in Ethiopia. White House spokesperson says the United States has repeatedly demanded an international probe into reports of human rights abuses in Tigray. Spokesperson Jen Psaki said President has engaged Addis Ababa on the importance of ending violence. In a press conference, she said Washington has reiterated that current situation in Ethiopia is unacceptable. This has come a day after the Secretary of State condemned ethnic cleansing in Tigray and called for the withdrawal of foreign forces. Human rights agencies claim that the army and rebels committed several war crimes in Tigray region during a brief conflict in 2020. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok says the Nile Dam issue with Ethiopia must be resolved. He made these remarks during a joint press conference with his Egyptian counterpart, Mustafa Madbouli, in Cairo. Hamdok said that he had discussed several matters with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, including the dam dispute. The Egyptian premier said Cairo is coordinating with Khartoum on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. He added that while Egypt is not opposed to Ethiopia's development, it should not harm the interest of Cairo and Khartoum. Both Egypt and Sudan lie downstream from the dam and fear that it could increase the risk of flooding. More than a dozen people are missing in a series of wildfires in Argentina. Country's national news agency says authorities believe the blazes were intentionally set, most likely in connection with a local conflict. The fires were burning in several spots in the Patagonia region known as the 42nd parallel. Interior Minister Guado de Pedro says the outbreaks were started simultaneously in different locations. In Chubut province, around 250 homes are believed to have been damaged, many of them completely destroyed. State Governor Mariano Asciorni said that the National Security Ministry asked for help in controlling the fire. Authorities say 7 people were injured, at least one of them seriously. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. China has launched its new generation Long March 7A Y2 carrier rocket in South China's Hainan province. The rocket will send an experimental satellite into the planned orbit. The satellite will be used for in-orbit tests of new technologies, including space environment monitoring. This Xicheng Satellite Launch Center termed the mission as an absolute success. The rocket will be the first type of high-orbit carrier rocket which will carry out multiple subsequent missions. This is the 362nd flight mission of the Long March rocket series. In Benin, French artist Guillaume Rigoros has painted 2 giant interlaced hands on the ground of a local beach. The painting is a part of his Beyond Walls project that features the longest human chain hands in the world. As waves were hitting the shore of Benin Beach, residents of Uda village gathered around and observed the artist in wonder. Their curiosity came to a positive end after strokes of paint formed into two giant interlaced hands on the ground. Legros, who is famously known as Sepe, says the intertwined hands are a symbol of kindness and goodwill. The renowned street artist is known for his monumental frescoes made with biodegradable paint on lawns and beaches across the globe. He arrived at Uda to finish the 10th step of Beyond Walls project, which started in 2019 and Champs-Élysées in Paris. Even though his paintings of hands look very similar in 10 locations, each of them has elements from local culture and history. Creating a human chain of hands around the globe represents unity, mutual aid, and common effort beyond geographical constraints. After almost 2 years, Sepe has visited 3 continents and painted 37 pairs of hands. The Greek capital of Athens has presented a unique solution to pollution and heat caused by overcrowding. Authorities have constructed bite-sized parks transforming small unused city plots ridden with garbage and weeds. This report has more.
Tucked between rows of towering apartment blocks on an Athens street, a small strip of green disrupts the surrounding concrete jungle. A few trees, plants, and a park bench fitted into as little as 100 square meters offers a bit of breathing space. Locals say such places create new reference points inside the city where people can congregate.
It's about creating green spaces, lowering the temperatures, giving quality of life, and creating new reference points inside the city for people to come together.
Cradled within mountains, the Athens basin can be stifling during heat waves when no northern trade winds are blowing, trapping heat and pollutants within. In a bid to limit vehicles, the city is closing lanes on main arteries and opening bike lanes and pedestrian walks with greenery. Featuring various species of trees and plants, pocket parks can also hinder residents from using their cars to travel to a regular park.
It is very nice to allow us to breathe a little, because the way we are living here, especially in this city, we are suffocating. So it's good and will be a good initiative to allow us to breathe a bit.
Experts say such projects are needed since the impact of climate change are expected to exacerbate the problem. The benefits of these urban spaces have been seen in cities such as New York and London.
Most Asia-Pacific markets have registered gains, riding the positive wave created by overnight record highs at Wall Street. Japan's Nikkei 225 is leading the gains, climbing close to 2%. South Korea's Kospi has added over 1% as well. Mainland Chinese bourses have also ascended nearly 0.5%. The ASX 200 in Australia has risen over 0.5%. However, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has shed over 0.5%. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.